100% of us are going to end grief even more than once. We are facing a tsunami of aging at scale. We've never had so many people age to such a ripe old age, all at the same time. The families become so socially isolated. Half of the people who were referred to us from the health service were home alone. They had no one. It doesn't kill you to talk about death. 25% of the deaths in Australia are due to cancer. The other 75% are the neurological conditions and genetic conditions who don't have the same attention or resources, death literacy, to be more knowledgeable about how to talk about death, dying, grief and loss.
Talk a bit more on loneliness, because that's happening not just with the elderly but with the young people as well.
35% of the Australian population said they were lonely in the last survey that was done. That is higher for even the 18 to 24-year-olds. Those are the ones who are so active on social media. They're globally connected, but these do not replace the human touch. It creates all sorts of physiological reactions in your body that makes you feel happy, wanted, appreciated, which you don't get from a screen. Human interaction is irreplaceable.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Professor Samar Aoun. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really pleased to have this interview with you, Dev.
And so glad to be sitting with you with your extensive work within the research and medical space. But before we talk about your work and the collaborations you are, through universities and then the work you're doing, can you talk a bit more about your story and your background and your history?
My story. So I guess I'm one of those migrants who came from Lebanon because of the war we had in Lebanon. We went to England for a while where we did our studies. The kids were born there, and then we emigrated here because the war kept going, and I don't think it's actually stopped even now. So it's a real shame. Australia is our home, and it's been a great decision for us to, build our home here and our future. And it's such a great place for opportunities and for the freedom to express, yourself and see how you can even bring people along you coming from a different culture that would be quite a positive for, in general, to the Australian culture. And so with my research in palliative care and bereavement support and compassionate communities, I've been really delighted that what I have been able to achieve along with my team has resonated so well with everyone, because after all, 100% of us are going to experience death and grief even more than once. So it is a topic that actually touches every one of us, disregarding of where we come from, of our age, of our diseases. It's about human suffering. How do we work together to help people through the stages of their life, that when they have really adverse events, when they are facing terminal illness, when they are grieving. So compassionate communities is about knowing how to support someone who's caring, dying and grieving. And it's been such a necessity now, even more so, because we have reached a stage where the number of Australians are going to double in the next 20 years. And about 60% of us are dying in hospitals. And so we were not going to have enough hospitals to die in, not enough beds. And as it is, we're struggling with the workforce, the palliative care workforce. The need is going to increase by 200%. So we are facing a tsunami of aging at scale. We've never had so many people age to such a ripe old age, all at the same time. And hence why we have all these issues now and challenges with how do you look after those people who are aging. So the only way to move forward with this is not more money towards hospitals and towards aged care beds, and if there is money, is how do you get the community to take its place and responsibility in actually knowing how to support someone who's caring, dying and grieving. Like in the old days, my grandparents said, your grandparents said, people knew what to do. I think the community has lost its skills and confidence to know how to support one another, unfortunately.
You want to dial down a bit back. How come in your studies and in your education as a young person, how come you had a leaning towards working towards the end of life kind of projects. What is what is the mindset of that person who would try to understand bereavement and then that death more closely?
I guess I'm the type who basically wants to work with the community and see where is the gap that we can fill. And when I started research in palliative care and working particularly with motor neuron disease, a dreadful, dreadful disease where until now we don't have a treatment and we don't have a cure. And I looked around, the only thing we can help those people with is to have a strong, knowledgeable community around them, to make their life bearable so that they can get the support and the quality of life. I mean, we do have not-for-profit organizations helping, but of course everyone is paid there. But there is a limit to what they can do because they open from 9 till 5, no one on the weekends. And these people who are suffering from motor neuron disease, the families become so socially isolated. First, because the community don't understand the disease well. They're scared. They don't know how to offer support. And therefore, families with whether motor neuron disease or other life-limiting illness live in such socially isolated life that if only the community knew that they could play a big role in their life, they would spend their living time, basically, or, living while dying, I suppose, in a much better way. So there is a better way of doing things. And palliative care is about this more holistic picture rather than just symptom management, because 5% of the care is delivered by clinical services. 95% of our day we spend with our loved ones, our communities, our schools, our universities, our workplaces, our faith organizations. These are the people who are with us all the time. We need to reskill them again. We need to give them the confidence to be able to support someone who's caring, dying, and grieving. And so I guess this is where knowing the situation with motor neuron disease made me think, what else can we do better? They're at home all the time, right? They don't need to go to hospital unless there is an acute phase that they're going through. And so the major burden of the disease falls on the family carer. And mostly it's the spouse or the mother. But what we are saying in compassionate communities is about how do you develop those networks of care around the family in need. It doesn't have to be one person doing that caregiving. And really to care for someone at home, you need a village. You need at least 10 people to be able to help and take on this job like probably on a roster so that the load is shared. And therefore, the family carer, whether a spouse or a mother or so on, do not get overwhelmed and do not get burdened. And then the next thing is, let's send our loved one to a hospital or to aged care facility. They'd be able to look after their loved one at home if that care is available. So we are saying to communities, come on, get back to how it used to be, because there's no other way now into the future of looking after the dying or the terminally ill if we don't work together for that.
Can you also give a bit of a context on the aging population with some numbers? And if there is a comparative between us and any other countries, we have compared that how fast we are aging as a country, and also the numbers of terminally ill people in Australia?
Look, 25% of the death in Australia are due to cancer.
25%.
But cancer gets most of the palliative care. And this is what we're saying. The other 75% are the neurological conditions, the genetic conditions, all that stuff, who don't care, who don't have the same attention or resources from palliative care, because obviously palliative care cannot look after every single life-limiting illness. Hence why when you look at the funding, the way it comes, it funds symptom management, clinical care. The rest, which is the majority of what people want, is psychosocial, spiritual, existential, family care support, bereavement support, still part of the palliative care definition, but it's ad hoc. No one is looking at that really well.
Do people understand? Does palliative care includes spiritual, psychosocial, all those things? Or people assume the word palliative care means, terminally ill, clinical support, full-time kind of a support.
And that's unfortunately where we haven't quite explained it well to the community. As soon as they hear palliative care, they think they're dying the following day. Palliative care is comfort care. Okay, you reach a stage where there's no more cure that's going to help anyone, but you still have a life to lead until death. And this is where palliative care gives that comfort, not just to the person with the disease, to the whole family. And this is where the part of the definition of palliative care kicks in. And so we haven't been able to explain this well to the community, unfortunately.
And from a government point of view, has the funding reflected that the palliative care does not only mean clinical support, it also means the whole lot of it?
And that's what we're doing through compassionate communities. This is what we are raising awareness about what palliative care is that's been ignored for a while, and that's gave the rise of compassionate communities. Is that ignoring that spiritual, emotional support, not just for the patient but the family carers, that basically the whole movement of compassionate communities across the world has taken shape, because we know that there is better, more sustainable care, more affordable care if the community is able to take part. And of course, we have trialed the Compassionate Connector program in the southwest of WA to actually see what happens if the community takes part in delivering that care. And that's why we had amazing compassionate connectors who answered the call to actually take part in this research trial, totally voluntary. And so they worked with palliative care services to actually to provide the practical and social support for families with life-limiting illnesses. And so apart from increasing social connectedness in the community as a whole, because those compassionate connectors have been able to build those sustaining networks around the family in need by bringing caring helpers from the community to be part of the friendship groups of those families and support them. What we also found out is that this group who was supported by the compassionate connectors, they had less hospital admissions, reduced length of stay in the hospital if they had to go in, less emergency department visits, and we doubled the amount of outpatients visits. So the reality of it, say if you have somebody with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, sometimes they get anxious about their breathing over the weekend. So what they used to do, they used to admit themselves to hospital because they had no one to actually call. So with that program and having the compassionate connectors and the caring helpers around them, they'd call one of them. And so they'll come and see them and comfort them and, able to assess whether they don't really need to be in the hospital. They're just anxious, especially if they are socially isolated. Half of the people who were referred to us from the health service were home alone. They had no one, which is a really sad situation with our society now. And we know that the loneliness epidemic is the one that's going to kill Australians much earlier than they need to be dying. Because when you're lonely, everything else is much worse, whether you have a chronic disease or not. And so back to the compassionate connectors. So what they do, they sit with that person until they feel better. And then on Monday morning, when the formal services open their doors, they would make the appointment for them. Because again, you have to sit a long time on the phone to make an appointment, and then they drive them there. And so that's why we had a lot more outpatients visits, which are a lot cheaper than a hospital admission. And so we have the proof that we have saved the health service about $500,000 every 6 months for each 100 patients that would be referred to the Compassionate Connector program. But the problem is the health service doesn't know what to do with those savings, because it doesn't come directly back to them. It goes into that bigger pot of WA Health. And then how do you retrieve that for the health service. It's something that I have discussed with the previous health minister. But of course, they've changed now. So it's not the same people I'm talking to anymore. But it is such a logical and a commonsensical approach to actually dealing with the calamity that we are going to face moving forward with aging and death and lack of hospitals and lack of workforce.
Part of the palliative care definition you talked about spirituality and then faith. And as that cohort of people who are aging right now have higher percentage of people who have a faith or follow some kind of a faith structure. How important it becomes at the later of your life, faith and then spirituality for people who are aging fairly quickly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, compassion, the word compassion came through faith organizations. This is where, whether the Catholic Church or, other faith organizations. So they play a big role in supporting people, and particularly those who have kept practicing their faith and going to their places of worship. They automatically have those compassionate communities around them. They're friends from, the church, the temple, whatever. So they've already got that during their lifetime, which will serve them well during their death time. It's those people who basically live their life as if they're on an island, I'm stoic, I can look after myself, I don't need anybody to help me. They're going to reach a stage where, oh my goodness, you need a lot of people to help you if you really want to have a good death. And so people need to be able to ask for help and accept help during their lifetime, because this way they are increasing the skills of their own community to know how to help someone. Because if you just say, no, sorry, I don't need help, then you've automatically first shut the social networks to help you in your time of need, and you have de-skilled the community for practicing on how to help each other. So what we are encouraging compassionate communities, it's okay to ask for help, because you don't know when it's going to be when you're going to offer help. It's got to be a two-way process. And we have a lot of people in our communities who really want to give help, but they're too scared because of all this paranoia about risk management and, thinking they may do a mistake. But I mean, this is not how it used to be before. We had a neighbor who would just automatically and help us. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But now with all this craziness about legal, problems,
insurance and everything,
it's a shame, because the community is suffering for that. And the epidemic of loneliness is a great example. That aging at scale, where we don't have anybody to look after those people who are aging, and our time will come as well. So we really need to think differently. There's a shift in mindset of how we do death, dying, grief and loss now. That's why we have programs of training that we are doing now in the community, whether in WA or nationally. So.
And the other challenge probably is to have this dialogue openly of death, bereavement, and then loneliness in the public sphere. Because people might not, in the mainstream media or community-wide, you might not focus on these topics in an open dialogue, so that people can come to conclusion and find some solutions around it.
Exactly. We haven't had those conversations in our communities anywhere because of this death-denying taboo subject that's death. And it's just incredible that it's the only certain event we are going to have and nobody is preparing for it. I mean, some people may not get married, some people, but death, we know we're all going to face it. So why are we still denying this and not having those conversations in good time, so that your family knows what are your wishes, before you die, instead of then basically feeling helpless in terms of what do they do, with someone who's dead in their family? What are their wishes? Do they want to be cremated? Do they want to be just buried, as they are? There's so many things that we need people to learn while they are living. And it doesn't kill you to talk about death. That's like people think sometimes if you bring the subject, they become superstitious as if they're going to die the following day. And that's in compassionate communities. What we are doing is opening those spheres, what we call for death literacy, for people to be more knowledgeable about how to talk about death, dying, grief, and loss. And we've been really successful, and people are really engaging in those conversations now. And I find the younger generation are even better. They're more open to this than, our probably parents, who basically have come from a culture where we don't mention it, So we really need to start earlier. We need to start from people at school. We need to start, telling them it's okay to talk about it. It's like any other event you have. So, and we have what we call now compassionate cafes. We have death cafes. We have grief cafes, where people who want to come and talk about it in a safe space, if they can't do it in their families, they come and see the experience of other people and learn from them. So the conversations are happening all across Australia, which is great.
The definition of grief and then people observing grief is very different from different communities as well, and psychologically for all individuals. How might we be more understanding or empathetic towards the process of grieving post loss of life in their life?
Certainly, it's totally different between the Western culture, say, and my culture, right? And I guess what brought me into this, your earlier question, when my father died, I received a call from Lebanon to say, you must come straight away. We don't wait to bury our dead. And it was the following day, it was Australia Day. So I didn't have much time to get ready. So I called the office to say, a previous employment, that's not the current one, that my father died. I just need to book my tickets. If I'm feeling okay, I'll come. And then I booked the ticket, and I thought to myself, am I going to sit by myself and mope? That's not how we do it. I'd like to be with my own community, my own colleagues, to actually, share this. And so I went to the office and went into the research meeting, and it was full of health professionals, the research meeting. And no one said anything to me. I was just thinking, there is something wrong there. I have lost someone dear to me, who's away from me as well, haven't been able to be there when they died. And I have friends who they know me well. And so this basically gave rise to the bereavement support survey that I've done across Australia, which has changed the way people looked at bereavement and grief, because at that stage, grief was looked upon as a pathology, and it was pathologized and medicalised like everything else, like death has been medicalised. And so people were told, if you have a death in the family, you must go and see a psychologist, you must go and see a grief counsellor. And so that research that we have done, and it's gone international, and it was used to build policies for grief and bereavement support across the world, showed that 90% of people can deal with their grief with their communities. With those 90%, 60% would have normal grief, 30% would have moderate kind of grief, and they need a bit more help from their communities, such as the Compassionate Connector program, or more people who are in the community trained more how to have these conversations. Only 10%, the peak of that triangle, needs to go to mental health professionals. Absolutely changed the landscape of grief from that research. And of course, it came from my own experience of how I felt and how I was treated when I had a grief. And of course, I went home to the funeral, and my experience was totally different. It's one of those surreal moments I felt where that my church community just completely took over looking after everything. The transactional and the relational stuff. And all I had to do is grieve, enjoy the 3 days of mourning with my friends, my families. We laughed together, we cried together, we ate together. And I just felt that it soothed my grief, the acute grief for that time. So when I came back to Australia, I think my family were a bit worried, like, I need to have some support. And I said, I've done it all there with my community. It's been amazing. So, and this is what I'd like to see, in Australia with all cultures. Of course, our indigenous people do it really well. Maori people do it well. Even the Irish, they do death well as well. So we need to spend time acknowledging the loss and the grief, when we lose somebody. We can't just brush it. And it's frustrating when we know that workplaces only give, 2 days for people to take bereavement leave? I mean, that's not enough to recover from a bad haircut, let alone, sort out a funeral, and spend time with your loved ones, really crying if you need to do that. So there's a lot that with Compassionate Community Australia that we need to work on advocacy to change those systems that are not serving communities. So one of the things, how do we get more bereavement support through workplaces? And we started also getting those programs for employees and employers, how to support someone who's caring, dying and grieving. We need to have this at schools. We need to have this in local government, all the settings that our communities, interact with. And because at the moment they are not serving the community the way the community needs to feel well looked after. But then they need to also feel the community. It is their responsibility and it's everyone's business to be part of delivering that care. Because after all, death is a social event with a medical component. It is not a medical event with a social component. Unfortunately, it's become medicalised. Similar with grief. It is a social event with some professional component. It's not a professional event with a social component. We need to turn things around the way we've been, I suppose, used to thinking about it, particularly in the last 20 years. Because in countries like Australia, where you have really good health services, community services, like paid community services, social services, the community takes a step back, thinking that health professionals do it better than them, where they do in what they are qualified to do. But death, dying, grief and loss has always been a community event, and nobody does it better than the community. So we are really reclaiming this now to strengthen the community capacity to deliver that care.
Typically, the compassion comes through when things happen on your street or in your family. You get to have more intimate understanding of things. But how might that empathy be created when you don't have that much grief coming in your life? You haven't seen grief at all. I remember for me when my grandfather passed away, and my flight from where I was studying a master's degree. So from there to going back home, it is a difficult journey to take, and to see the way the grief was taken. When you're not ready, how do you get somebody to prepare before something like that happens?
Yeah, you're right. This is a really good question, because unless you have the experience, you just don't know the depth of the feeling, that you will encounter. And I guess, we have reached a stage where people don't even see death people, because if they die in the hospital, straight to the morgue and then straight to the funeral provider. While before, in our time, you have the dead stay in the family for a couple of days in the house, where you can see the emotions as a young child growing up. You are part of, that consoling, comforting, community that you are part of. But when you don't see this growing up, you're not prepared for it at all. And so this is why we're trying to say, just make it visible again. You don't have to be hiding it between curtains and closed doors. If somebody dies, even in aged care facilities, they used to take the dead body from the back door. And what we're saying, this is so undignifying for somebody who has spent time with the other residents, and now they do more of a they say goodbye properly. And the the dead body is taken in the corridors where the residents are on both sides saying their goodbyes properly. So if we don't have those acts of compassion showing, as you have said, it's difficult to actually get prepared. And again, what we have done in the city of Bunbury, we worked with the council to develop the Compassionate City Charter. where we have done a lot of focus groups with the community to see how can we develop Banbury as a more compassionate city. And so we've got a whole charter now for the community to think about a much bigger scale. And also we worked with the mayor to have mayoral awards for compassion. And therefore the stories are there. So on World Compassionate Communities Day, which is the 1st of November, the awards are given to a most compassionate act, to a compassionate individual, to a compassionate organization, typically to actually make compassion more visible in the community and to deliver this education that people want. We even have a toolkit for people to actually refer to if they want to do something compassionate in their communities, and they need to have some examples of what to do that's manageable for them.
Do people carry grief post when they have not grieved sometimes it happened with me. I think when I lost my grandma, I could not go immediately there as I didn't see the last ritual. So I was carrying the grief until I visited back home and then been to her room and then just, do people carry grief? Because I was carrying grief for at least more than a year plus since from the time of death to time I went back to her place and to see her house and see her things. How does that happen? Is it a very, very normal experience of people?
People think that grief gets smaller with time, but the reality is that grief stays the same, but its life grows around it. And this is what we're saying to the community. You need to fill that space around the grieving person so that they can continue living, but still that grief in their heart. So it really depends on how traumatic the situation is. So somebody losing their child, it's really traumatic. And it's something they will never recover from. But this is where the community can just make things a little bit easier for them and surround them with love and, comfort, throughout, for the rest of their life. You lost your grandmother. Again, it all depends on the attachment as well that you had towards your grandparents. If you felt like going back and sort of closing that chapter, I suppose, in your mind, that resolved that acute loss that you felt, well, that's great. That's worked for you. So there is no one way on how to resolve the grief. It's very personal, and everyone looks at it and work on it in a different way.
The future outlook of, as we talked about aging and loneliness, can you talk a bit more on loneliness? Because that's happening not just with the elderly, but with the young people as well.
Oh, absolutely. So 35% of the Australian population said they were lonely in the last survey that was done. That is higher for even the 18 to 24-year-old. And of course, those are the ones who are so active on social media. They're globally connected. But these do not replace the human touch because the body keeps the score. So if you have this human connection, it creates all sorts of physiological reactions in your body that makes you feel happy, wanted, appreciated, which you don't get from a screen.
No.
So there is a time for a screen and a time for an app, but the way it's happening now, it's replacing human contact, which is a detriment for the mental health of the young and the old. And we really need to basically be more cognizant of this now before, again, more tragedies happen.
So there is a use case of, AI companions. So for elderly who are already socially isolated, they are using AI companions to interact because, probably they don't have, not having that much interaction. But for younger people are also using AI friends or AI companions on a regular basis. How do you think that phenomenon will further push the idea of loneliness, or will it support the reduced loneliness?
But if you have an AI friend, you're still stuck in your own home or your own office. Like, the interaction with a human is different to a doll or an AI friend across the screen. It may, on the shorter term, maybe fill a gap, but on the longer term, people need people. Human interaction is irreplaceable by this stuff. And I just feel it's a total cop-out to actually say to an aged person, here, have an AI friend because I don't have time to be with you, you know? And I just really call out to the community, please take your place in this, because no matter of how much AI is developed, that is not how human people need to be dealt with, and particularly those towards the end of life. They could do it 10 minutes a day, but they need somebody, they need real people around them. So the actual proof that loneliness is skyrocketing, it means all these things are not a sustainable option.
How do you think that the system long-term move away from the clinical mindset it has to, or medicalized mindset, to more of social mindsets? What are the pathways from here? Because everybody thinks palliative as clinical or medical, don't see it as a social event. So what do you think are the leading indicators so that we flip the script?
Yeah, and we are working with palliative care physicians who are really understanding that there is a limit to what they can do. If the community doesn't take its place and work with them. So we're not only educating the community, we are educating the health professionals, and there are a lot of health professionals who are supporting compassionate communities. And for instance, we are working now on a course at UWA on what we call public health palliative care, which compassionate communities is one strategy of that, so that medical students are exposed to this early enough in their career. And I've presented to medical students. And of course, one of the basically fear that one mentioned to me, they don't know, they're scared of basically if they have a patient who dies, they would not know how to deal with that person. So while we are offering, those programs in grief literacy, what I said also to this medical student, but if you have a community that's able to support your patient when they die, your job would be easier. It will not fall on you 100%. And that's why we're trying to do community health professionals working together to basically have what we call compassionate communities now.
Leadership plays a different role in different lives, and you learn leadership skills through incidents and opportunities, what you gain. And the work you have done is fairly, probably very exception scenarios. Not many people go into this line of work. What are the lessons learned from a point of view of, as leaders, or as community leaders, or, people who are working in the corporates as well? What are the leadership lessons you have learned in your journey here?
Compassionate leader will go a much further way than any other leader, the kind of traditional way of leading. And I felt this time and time again. Everyone is a leader in their own life. And this is, so how do you basically bring everyone to feel that leadership within them? You just set the right example for them. You just lead by example. There's no point lecturing or doing anything. And I guess for me, that leadership, compassionate leadership, I felt it much younger from my grandfather, who was a doctor, in rural Lebanon. And the way he had led the community and helped them for better health, for better looking after each other. He was a totally community-minded person with his medical expertise. And I felt he was somebody I could emulate myself, basically, as a community-minded person with my research expertise, and then get the two together, you know. We need the research evidence for everything we do, but we need that compassion when we are translating that evidence. We need to really know what the community wants first. What is going to make them feel leaders in their own space themselves? Because one leader is not enough, particularly in this space of community, basic compassionate communities. Everyone is a leader in their own things, but we follow the same compassion that we are basically trying to build the capacity of communities for that. So I guess I was honored to get my AM just, of course, this year, beginning of this year. And this is what my grandfather did. He had a similar medal from the Lebanese Republic. Unfortunately, he had it at his death, at his funeral. But, I kind of look at how much I kind of learned from him just by watching. And he died when I was 6 years old. But what I learned from him is what the community said about him. As soon as they hear my surname, they would ask me, how are you related to Dr. George Aoun? And I said to somebody my age, how would you know about him? Like, he's like your grandparents' generation. Oh, my parents still talk about him with the way he has treated the family, the way he has embraced their pain, their grief, was with them all the time, till they got better. It's amazing because this is what you leave behind you, is that legacy of compassion and love. No matter how, skilled you are in whatever profession you are in, people will remember how you made them feel. And this is what's so important.
Wow. In conclusion, if you can, conclude on not just the leadership, but your purpose and values, and then few understandings for us, for all the listeners and the viewers too, in terms of if they have to understand grief, and what can they do, and then what kind of conversations they need to have beforehand.
When we know that grief is something that everyone is going to feel, what people at the moment fear the most is that they don't know what to say when they see someone grieving. They feel that they are scared of saying the wrong thing. But that's not insurmountable, because that's again part of grief literacy. There are things you can say and things it's better if you don't say, because it makes things worse for the person. But once people know what to do and say, things become a lot easier for them to navigate this field. And again, for the grieving person, there are things that, they can say when they want support and say when they don't think they want support. And that's fine, because obviously sometimes people try to be more friendly and offer when the offer is not needed. So it's about balancing that asking for help and that offering the help, grieving that we should happen. So this is part of, what we say in sort of grief literacy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Samar Aoun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dev.